Hello everyone. So in this project we are going to build a simple brand identification game built with Tkinter as the front end and Sqlite3 with Python as the backend. So this game has some clues. So we have to answer some questions that expect some required answers. So if we can have a clue button. When the user clicks on it, it will reduce half of the points and keep track of the scores and so on. So the high score is calculated in the end along with the user score. So this should be a simple front-end Tkinter GUI and Sqlite3 application. So before we go into project any further, I would like to show you what we are actually trying to build. So this is the application. So we have just simple information. We have 4 about tabs. So here we are just going to click on the start button. It'll just enter for my name. So I'll just say user and enter the name. And this is the first question, so it started. So right now I just have some car companies along with some information about it, and when I click on clue button it will just show the image of probably the symbol or whatever clue we're trying to give. So I know this is Bentley, so I'm going to proceed. But since I gave the clue button, yeah, first of all, one answer just lead to 10 points, but if I click on the clue button, it'll just reduce my points by half. So I'm just going to have 5 points in the end. And this is Rolls Royce, so I have a clue here, so never mind. And Mercedes Benz. Yep, so my score is 20. It was supposed to be 30, but since I have had 2 clues, just reduced me. So this is the highest score that I created a test user and had a full score here. So it's from the database, and yep. So if I click on play button, it'll just show it. So this is the project we are building. It simply uses all the CRUD operations from the SQLite database. So we're going to create a table, create rows. We are going to read from the tables. We are going to update the tables, and we will delete the few rows if we want. And it is neatly provided by the Tkinter GUI. So the front end, the user can just start playing, and it has some nice instructions about the app and so on. So I'm just going to show you the exact roadmap of how we are going to build this project. First, we will cover the basics of Tkinter and SQLite. So whatever functions or widgets, for example SQLite commands we are using, I'll just show you how it works, and later on we will use those commands in the project. And next we will start developing the front end window, but this time we won't create any functionalities. The buttons don't do anything. We won't be able to actually play the game. And up next we will start creating the application. So first we will just use the application without any database. So I'll just have the question and answers in the Python script without any external storage, permanent storage medium. So it's almost like a complete project but without any database. And next we will just integrate the SQLite database into our application. So this time we will have permanent storage medium, and we will be able to keep track of the high scores, and we'll be able to add questions and so on. So before we start the project, we're going to be needing Python. I'm going to be using Python 3.8 for this tutorial, and Tkinter probably comes with a Python package, and till we just need to import with pip install pillow, so pillow, and SQLite, it almost comes with, yeah, it most certainly comes with the default Python package, but we are going to use extra one, that is SQLite Studio. So just for tutorial we will be showing you how the basic SQLite works. So I have a test database that has 2 tables, and I'll be showing you how to work with the SQLite database from this SQLite Studio. So that's it we're going to be needing, and this is the framework, this is the layout for our application. So If you remember, we had a frame header that had logo and header description, this one, and we have a frame menu here that contains home button, info button, about, and so on. And then the frame body will actually play the image identification game. So that's it for the project. So up next we will be covering the basics of Tkinter and Sqlite. Okay, so in this video we'll be starting with the basics of Tkinter. So Tkinter is a front-end GUI application. So it stands for Graphical User Interface. So all it does, so in our application we have a window, and inside the window there are several widgets. Labels are just used for displaying the information, such as welcome to Tkinter project and so on. And buttons are used to handle any events. So when we click a button, a certain function get executed. So these labels, buttons, and frames are all widgets of Tkinter. So they are all inside a Tkinter window. So I'll just first import from Tkinter. I'm going to import ttk command tk. So and now I'll be instantiating from this tk class. So this is a class. I'm just creating an instance of it. So this instance is a window, and in order for the window to run until I close the button, so I'm just going to be using root.main loop. So I've created a button, and inside I have created a window, and inside this window I can have labels and buttons packed by geometry managers. So geometry managers helps us to place the widgets inside them at whatever place we decide. So I can have a button at the leftmost corner or at the rightmost corner. So there are three types of geometry managers: pack, place, and grid. So in our project we'll be using mostly pack and grid. So before we go on to those details, I'll just run this program. So as I said, this is just a window, and this window is going to run until I close the button. So this main loop listens for any events. So if there's any button, I can click the button and it will wait for the event to happen. So those kind of actions. So I'm just going to run this demo.py file, and this is the window I was talking about. This window has really nothing inside. I don't have any labels or buttons created, but it is existing waiting me to create any events, such as if there's any button, it will wait for my actions. So until I close this button, this program is going to run. So as you can see, this program is running, but if I close this window, it returns the prompt anytime now. Yep. So now we have a simple window. Inside the window, I'm just going to be creating labels. So these are texts that I'm be showing. So for that, we are just going to use this ttk dot label. So capital L there. And first we need to give inside which window or frame this label is going to be reside on. So I'm going to give root. So this is the main window, and inside this window the label is going to appear. So that's what I'm saying. And text equals, so I'm just going to give this is a test label. Okay, so right now I have created a label, but I did not tell Tkinter where or how to place the label. So I have a label, but in order to place it inside the window, I need to use one of the three geometry managers that I talked about. They are pack, grid, grid, and place. So for now I'll just use pack button. So what it does is, so the label is created, pack method tells to defaultly stack the label onto the window, on top of the window. So If I run this, you can see, I'll just zoom in. So this is a label, and the reason for the default window to be this smaller is this, it takes the entire width of the label, so width and height of the label. So since we have just only one label, it just takes this. So but if I can maximize it. This is the label. So if I create a new label, ttk.label, and say root comma text equals this second label, and I'm going to pack it as well. Oh, where did the bracket go? Okay, so if I run it now, you can see there are two labels and they are just vertically stacked up to one another. That's what the pack does by default, right? Okay, so now let's create buttons now. So buttons is exactly like, almost like label. So I'm just going to be providing which window the button should appear and the text on the button. I'll say click me, and the third parameter it takes is command. So what should the button execute, what function the button should execute when the button is clicked. So I'll just say a test function. Yeah, this is the callback function, so I'll just make it more meaningful. Button clicked. So I should create this function. I'll just pack it and create. So def button clicked and print the button is clicked. Okay, so this is exactly like label, but the extra parameter is command. So whenever the button is clicked, we are just going to see this the message on the console. So if I run this, button click is not okay. So I'll just like paste top of it. Okay, so this is the button and the text is inside the button. So if I click on this, right now you can see the button is clicked appears on the message. So as long as I click, so this appears here. So this is the main loop event that is waiting for me to, that is listening on to the events that I am doing. So I'm just clicking it and the main loop captures it while I close the button. So close the program. So whenever this button is clicked, it will just call this function. As I click the button, this function will be called as much as time that I tell it to be. Okay, so before we move on to next, we'll be covering frames. But before I go on to frames, I'll just show you a small note to be taken care of. So right now, if I don't give this back, this is an object. So if I want to save, I can save this object, like for example, my label equals, and I can then use the pack method. I can then use the pack method on this label. So my label is equals my label dot pack. This is exactly equivalent to this, right? But this is kind of will not provide exact output. So it's because this is a label. It will return this label and to be stored in this variable, my label. Yep, it will return this variable. But if I use the geometry manager on this, it will no longer return this object, right? So if I just comment it out and run the program, you can see no difference. So this is a test label and exactly as it appears. But if I do pack on this method will not be the variable will not get nothing, for it will get none, and the none is stored here and it will prompt something like none has no attribute pack. It's because I use the pack method on it. The widget, I mean, you can see no changes in the window. It will just work fine. Okay, so if it runs, okay, so this is the error because if you print my label, it will be a none value. See, but the label is placed because I used the pack method on it, but it returns none, and since it is none, it cannot use the pack method. So it's just to be careful. So this is the exact, I mean, right syntax, and this is also right one. So when we'll be using this, when will I need to store this variable is, for example, for buttons, after the button is clicked, later on in the program I might need to disable the button from further use, right? Another example is entry widget. So entry widget is just a text widget. So I'm just saying my name equals ttk.entry. It takes only the root argument and it says, let me just say pack. I mean, sorry, I don't need pack on it. Name.pack. So this is the text widget. I'll just show you now. Yeah, here I can enter my name and just probably do anything with that. And let me create a button though. ttk.button, capital B, root comma text equals click dot command test button is clicked. So what I'm doing is I have, yeah, you can just forget this label for now. I have an entry widget and I'll just type something there, and afterwards, after I typed, I'll just click the button. So when the button is clicked, I'm going to print the value of the entry that I typed. So dot get. So if I run this program, so I'm just going to be typing it. So if, yeah, you can see it. So whenever I type something, for example testing, and click on it, I'm just getting the display, I mean, I'm just getting the text after the button is clicked. It was possible because I saved this entry widget and then packed on it, and then I'll be able to use this entry widget and get the value of whatever I typed inside it. So I'm getting the value only after the button is clicked, right? So if I just don't have any function and give it directly, it will just print me an empty value because by the time I enter it, the program would have run and I won't be able to type the message. So this is exactly what I did here. So for labels, I won't be using this. I won't be saving the widget to the variable and use the pack method on it. For labels, I'll just use something like directly label root comma text equal to something, and I'll just pack it right there. I won't be needing to save it in IO for later use. But for entry and for few other buttons, I'll just do like this way instead of this way. Okay, so now let me have a simple label. Let me get rid of all of this and show you other pack geometry manager. This is the label. So right now I have pack geometry manager. Now I'm going to show you grid. So pack is also kind of powerful, but it has quite restricted use. So by default it stacks to the vertically like this, but with grid I can create more complicated structures, right? So I'll just show you two labels. This is second label, and I'm going to use grid geometry manager. So let me just give row equals 0 and column equals 0. So I'm going to tell the Tkinter where I should place the widget. So I can imagine as a table. So I have a widget and I'm going to place it in row 0, column 0, and this widget in row 1 and column 1. So this means there are four types of places where I can actually place it, either row 0, column 0, or row 0, column 1, and row 1, column 0, row 1, column 1. So since I have like this, we can create more complicated structures with these. See, so this is the label and this is second label. This is the gap here, so I can just make any other label or widget I want. If, for example, this is my third label inside row 0 and column 1, and here I can have row 1 and column 0. So I'll just replicate these, and this is second, third, and fourth, and 1, 0. So if I run, all the 4 values will be filled because I used all of them. So we'll be using these kind of grid and pack in our projects. And next, I'll be quickly showing you frames. So right now we have all the widgets inside the root window. But for easy structuring of the organization, organizing the widgets, I just divided the window into 3 frames, and this frame contains the general description of the project, and this is the menus, the home button, the info button, play button, and so on. And here I'll be just having the play. So this helps me to organize, and it won't disturb the other frames. So if I have multiple widgets in the same window, like managing one widget will probably will affect the other widgets. So I'll just divide this into frames. So for not to create the frames, I'm just going to use, so first I'll just save it in a variable, for example frame header and ttk.frame. So this frame is going to be inside the root window. So everything should be inside the root window, but the priority is just going to change. So in order to show you what I mean, the label is still inside the main window, but it's not directly in the main window. Its parent is frame header. So I'm just going to make this label inside the frame header, but this label is in turn inside root window. So you can see the hierarchy. First, root is the window, and inside there is a frame header, and inside the frame there is a label. So I can create another frame, second frame, and name it ttk.frame root frame second dot pack, and I'll just copy this frame second. This is probably second label. Okay, so the hierarchy is like this. There is root. Let me just use attribute C here. So there is root, and inside there are 2 frames, frame header and frame second. And inside the frame header there is a label widget, so label 1, and I did not name these labels, but just letting you know. So this is the hierarchy. So root has 2 children, probably you can say that, and frame header and frame second is one of them. Frame header has 1 child and frame second has 1 child. So this is how it makes the organization neat. So if I run this, you won't see any kind of difference because I did not have any border for the frames and so on, but we'll be having those kind of borders. For example, I can configure it, frame header dot config relief equals to rich padding me, I forgot the syntax for it. Yep. So I'm just need to import this bridge. So it does nothing, but it just makes it stand out for differentiation purpose. So as you can see, this is this is a frame, and I have this kind of border. There are 8 kinds of border. I've used grid here. There is probably groove or sunken and so on. So I'll need to import some of these. I'll just show you groove. So this is kind of inwards, but groove is kind of outwards. Yep. So this covers the basics of Tkinter. So up next we'll be showing you the basics of SQLite and how to work with the database. So in this video we're going to cover the basics of SQLite. So we need a permanent storage medium to store the data like questions and so on. We cannot, we can actually store it in Python script, but we have to rerun the, for example, I have at the start of a Python script a dictionary that contains a question and answers, but at some time we'll be needing to store them permanently because I might need to add questions graphically. So I cannot just add graphically every time the same question. So in order to do that, we can just use the SQLite or any permanent storage medium to store the questions permanently and then use them for later purpose. So there are actually many kinds of storage medium. For example, you can use common files, a text file. You can use it to store the questions and high score and so on. But it is not efficient to use files, and as the data we are managing gets bigger, files are not efficient. So we are moving to databases. It has been around for several decades, and it is one of the most very efficient use of data that can be used for any type of applications. So for creating a database, I'm just going to create a new one, and I'll just use the plus button. So I'm just going to be naming it brand and click on OK. So this database is here. So first I need to connect to the database. So I'm connected. So right now I have no tables. So database contains many tables, and tables contains many rows and columns of data. So columns are the special properties, for example attributes, while rows are some entries. So if I have a user, I store him in a separate variable. For example, first we store it in a database. The table contains 2 columns. For example, in the first column I'll just use the first name, and the second column I'll just use the second name of the user. So in one row I store the first name and the second name. So that's how it goes. And if I want to create a new user, I'll just go to second row, and it has the same column, first name and second name, but this user is probably going to have a different name. So I'll just doing that. So first I'll be creating a table. So graphically, there's ways to create tables in program, but now we are just going to show you how to create them graphically. So first I'm going to insert the table name. So I'm going to enter them graphically, but this is going to be converted into code later on in time. So that is the DDL. So create table. So I've created the create table button. So it created an empty table for me. Right now I did not name it, so it's empty. So I'm just going to name the table here. So I'll just say users. And then I'm going to add columns to this database. So first I'm going to insert the ID. So this is going to be primary key, and it's unique and not null. So what do I mean by this? So every row in the database has to be unique. There should be no duplicate values. So every row should be unique in some way. But there might be instance, you can say that name can be unique, but there might be instance where 2 users can have same name and both of their data can be like mismatched. So in order to avoid that, we are going to have a column called ID. No matter what the user data is, first name, last name, address, anything might be same, but the ID is going to be unique for every user. So querying by ID always we don't have any mismatches while querying the ID. So this is an important type of column, and primary key is just a way to, it says it can identify a table uniquely and it's not going to be null. So if there is any null value, so if I didn't give any ID, it will just show me an error, so I can correct it. So I have a column, I'm going to give another column and say username, and this time I don't need it to be primary key, I might need it to be unique, because for example if you are managing a bank account, that no two users can have two usernames. So whenever the username is same, I'll just make them enter a different kind of a string. So username 1, username 2, and so on. Yeah, whenever there's an update, this value will be updated, and yeah, no duplicate value will be there. So I have two columns for this table, but I don't have any row for now because I'm just creating a table, I'm not filling any tables. So right now this is created, but it's not committed to the database, meaning I did not save this table to the database. So this is the code that has been generated, like I have used the columns, but this is the actual code that we will use if we are creating it by hand. So I'm just going to save this table. So it's telling me that these are the queries that are going to be executed. So do you want to save it? I'm just clicking OK. So right after that, you can see a table is created called users, and it has columns ID and username. So but I did not enter any row for any row, but it does have columns ID and username. So I'm just going to create a row graphically. So first it's going to be 1, and the username is going to be, for example, first user, and I'm going to save it, and this is saved, right? So now I'm going to be showing you how to query from the database. For example, reading from the database, creating a new row. So right now I've created it graphically, but in the Python script we'll need to use it in the program. So for that I'm going to open the SQL editor. So I'm going to execute commands in this. So in order to select the values from our table, so there is a database attached to this table. So I'm going to get the value from this table. So select. So it is good convention to follow the practice that database commands are going to be in capital, but even this works as well. I mean, lowercase select from, but it's good to get the convention because it helps us differentiate which is the data and which is the SQL command. So in order to get the value, so I'm just going to get these two values from the database, which is this, right? So for that I'm going to use select star from users, the name of the table. So first select says it is going to read some data from the table, and star means we are selecting every column from the table and from users. So I have a table called users, and from it I'm going to select every column. So if I run it, okay, we need some syntax. So the syntax is we need to give it a semicolon for it to end. Okay, so when I ran this, you can see it returned me two columns, ID and username of the table. So meaning I am selecting everything from the users. So every row, so in order to select a particular column, I'm just going to say, for example, username. So it has two columns, I'm just going to select username from it. So ID is not displayed, only username is returned. I can give ID, and so it returned only the ID. So this is how we execute into it, I mean read from the database. And now let me just add something to the database. So in order to add something, so I'm just going to create a new row. right? So back then, um, let me open this, and I created a row graphically, but now I'm going to create a row from program wise. So let me just go. So in order to create it, I'm just going to say insert into, this is the database command, and the name of the table. So I gave the name of the table as users, and what so there are two columns, right? ID comma, yeah, actually ID comma username, user underscore name. So first I'm saying in which values and which columns I'm going to enter data, and now I'm going to actually enter the values of the data. So I should give 2 here, because I created a row with ID equal to 1, and IDs are meant to be unique. So if I give 1, it won't run. So I'll just show you 1, and I'm going to insert the name of the second user as string. I should give it in a string because it's a text input. So in double quotes I'm giving it, and followed by semicolon. I mean, SQL syntax can extend to multiple lines, but in order to differentiate which one is the syntax, I mean which one is the command, we are just ending it with a semicolon, so it does not clash with the others command that I will give it. So if I run it, it says unique constraint failed, because I have let me just make it in a single column, so single row. So I already have ID as 1, so it shows me there cannot be 2 IDs with the same number. So I'm just going to create a new row with new ID, and it will be executed. So I'll just read from the database right soon after it is done. So let's start from users. So this record will be inserted. I'm going to select everything from the users. Okay, so number of rows affected is 1. So now if I run this command, you can see 2 values of it. So I cannot run the same command again, because it has a same number. It will just show me that 2 is, yeah. It will just show me another error because I do already have that. So I'm going to create a third user, and with ID equal to 3. Syntax error. Okay, so yeah, I might need to add them separately. So now if I use the select command, select star from users, we'll have the third row. Okay, so this is the reading operation from the database, and yeah, and after that we will just add some updating operations. Right, we are going into the tutorial, but for now this basics is enough to get us started. Okay, so now we are going to design the front end part of our application. So this is going to be a single window application. This content, I mean, according to the contents, we are not going to create a new window. We're just going to render different frames based on different conditions. So if this is going to be static, these 2 frames are going to be same no matter what option is selected. So if I have home button is selected, we have frame body, which is going to have different set of labels that says welcome to something, and here we have instructions button. So for instruction buttons, we have some how to guide in this frame body. So these two are going to be same, but the frame body is going to be different for every type of options. So that's what we are going to build. So logo is label. So we are going to create an instance of photo image And yeah, these three are also labels, and these four menus are going to be buttons, and frame can contains labels, buttons, entries, and so on. So let me just show you the code of our project. So right now, this is the main application in which I have the front end ready. So here I'll be coming to copy the codes, some redundant codes that I and paste it here to reduce some time. So first let me start with using Tkinter. So from Tkinter I'm just going to be importing tk, tk. So as you know, we're just going to create a root window, and inside this root window everything is going to reside, and I'm going to make it run like this. Okay, but the difference is we are not just going to create labels and buttons here. We're just going to create a class, for example brand, yeah, and I'm going to pass this root window to this class. So let me just use pass, and I'm going to create an instance root. Okay, so I created an instance, window from tk, and I'm just passing this window to the class to be used inside it here. So I'm not going to create labels outside of the class. So every label is going to be inside this class. So right now the root is the same window. The same window has the name as master here. So this is going to be the master window, or I can just call it root, but I'll just stick it with master. So outside the class it's going to be named root, and inside is master, but I'm going to use it as self.master equal to master. Is because if I create another function here, for example if it has a test, I can access the self.master window here, but I won't be able to use master directly, as this variable will be out of scope, but because whenever this function is executed, this variable does not have any stored, it will just probably throw an error that master is not defined. But since I have passed itself here, this self.master will be available to everyone. So for example, I can create ttk.label, and this is going to be inside the self.master window. The text equal to, this is a test label, and I'm going to pack it. So if I run this application now, wait a minute. Oh, I need to call this self.test. Yeah. Yeah, even though I have defined a class test, I did not call it anywhere. Yeah, so we can see this. So this is how we are going to do it. We are using mainly because class because they have many reusable components, and it's very easy to maintain with its object-oriented programming approach. Alright, so now we're just going to be implementing the 3 frames that I told you. So first the frame is this one. So I'll just copy it from here and explain it over there. Okay, so I'll just show you this. I'm just going to call this function. Okay, so first you can identify this is going to be some the initial setup. So the master window is going to be this width, so 640 width, and the height of the window is going to be 500, and 250 is the offset from the left side of the screen, and 150 is the offset from the top of the screen. So for example, if let me just comment everything and just use 2 of these, and this is the title of the window. So the top of the window contains this name. So right now nothing is here, but you can see the width of the window is 640 and height is 500, and the offset is 250 from the left. I changed it a bit. I just dragged it, but whenever the application opens, it will be something around here. 150 from the top. If I have something like 10 here, it will be quite sticky to the top with some gap, right? So that's the initial configuration. I'll just leave it in 150. And the brand identification is the name, as you saw, the name of the window. So I'm just going to create a few options here. So first I'm going to create a frame header. So we know that it is in the main window. The frame is inside the main window, and I'm going to name it as frame header dot frame header, and I'm going to pack it, right? So, and inside it we have three labels, 1, 2 and 3, right? So this label is just text, and this is also text as we have studied earlier, and it has some grid property. For example, row equals 0 and column equal 1. I don't need these for now. I'll just explain what that is. So these are normal text labels, but in order to show the logo of the image, so if I run it, photo image, oh, I need to import. Okay, so right now the logo is not visible. I will, yeah, it is because it has not enough space. Even though I defined this width of the window, let me just, where is the option? Yeah, even though I have this window, the logo is just going to span across these two. But since the logo is big, quite big, I don't have any space for it to show it here. So I'll just show it later. When if I implement these, it'll probably be shown there. So you don't need to focus on this for now. So these are the two labels that I have. So it is in row 0, and yeah, it is also in row 1. So these are the two labels inside the frame header. Now I'm going to create another frame here, and it's going to be inside the main window as well. So I'm just packing it, and it has 5 buttons here. I mean 4 buttons. Profile button, and just info, settings, and so this frame contains 5 buttons, and it is in 4 buttons, sorry, and it is inside this frame menu. So if I run this, you can see home. Okay, so yeah, I provided a callback function here, right? This function should exist. So we know that buttons need to have a callback function. So whenever the button is clicked, it has to be executed. But right now I did not implement this function, so it shows an error. Let me just implement it real quickly. Def home self pass. So info is another button's callback name, and about and settings. I don't need to name these buttons though, because I'm not going to configure these buttons, so I'll just remove them. I named these buttons thinking I might have wanted later, but in the end I did not use these buttons, so yeah, I don't need to name them. Okay, what now? So now it should work. So there are 4 buttons, as you can see. Right now they don't do anything because all I did is pass it in the function. So you can see the grid geometry manager. So the buttons are in the same row. Everything is in the same row, but the columns differ. So column equal to 0, column equals 1, 2, 3. So that's how they are managed. So right now, let's implement the logo here. So logo is going to be labeled. The only thing that we are going to be saying differently, we have to give the image equal to something, but we cannot use the logo I have is a Python GIF image, like this, but I cannot use the image directly here inside Tkinter like this. For example, Python logo.gif, it won't work. So first we need to convert it into a photo image. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are just using this photo image library, and we are just going to pass the file name. So file, yeah, this is a required parameter here. So, and inside I'm just going to pass the original image that I have, and subsample just resize the image. So the image is going to be big, but subsample kind of reduces the image. So as I increase this number, for example 5,5, it just reduces the size of the image. So this yeah, I save the resultant value in the cell.logo, and I'm going to use this inside the label. So instead of text, I'm just using image, and I'm just passing this. So that's how it works. So for using the logo, yeah, you can see that it's so if I have something like a big subsample, it'll appear bigger. So the reason it did not appear before I implemented these options is it had no space for this logo to appear. These two labels define the total height of the application, even though I expanded this, but these two are what control the height. So now if I have a different frame, right? So it is now free to appear. So this is bigger, so I'm just going to subsample it to 5,5, and now it will be in the perfect logo shape, right? Okay, so yeah, I will just use 3,3, a little bit bigger, and it should be now good to go. Okay, perfect. So we have created the two static frames that I talked about. Now we need to have a frame header that is going to be changed every time I click this. So the window is not going to be refreshed, only the frame is going to be refreshed. So for that, what I have to do is in these four menu, right, every time I call the function, I should say that I should forget the old contents of the old frame, and I should create a new frame and populate the data or labels inside it. So that's exactly provided by create default frames here. So this is the home button here, so I'm just going to copy it. I'll explain it as I go. Okay, and I'm going to call the home button now, not the default frames. So what it does is I have a master here, and I'm calling this, right? Okay, so I don't have anything now. So create frame body does all the work for it. So create frame body, where is it? Yeah. So this function is responsible for forgetting everything. Okay. Where am I calling this? Create default frames is here. Yeah. So self.create default frames. Okay, so now let me explain the code. So as you can see, the default frames had the logo and those kind of things, the static frames. So whenever the application wrote, this frame is not going to change its value, right? So I'll just paste it on the top here to be more clear. So first, I'll just create all the static frames that I talked about. So creating all the master frames and creating adjusting the size and the title and the header description and the buttons. So this is going to be constant for the rest of the window application. So I'm just going to call it but after that I'm going to show the default page, right? So home, I'm just going to call it. So here I am creating a frame body here, so I'm calling this function, and this function what does is forget the old frame body. So for the first time this will be created, frame body equals ttk.self.master. So like just like this, I'm creating all the frame body, but what the difference is, this is going to be dynamic. So I'm just going to call this, I need to call this in every function, because the frame body is going to be different for every functions here. So I'm refreshing the frame essentially. So this frame body now has 3 labels, I mean 1 button and 2 label, but whenever I click on this info button, what it does is it refreshes the frame body. So here I'm just forgetting it. So frame body dot forget is a method, the default method. What it does is deletes all the labels that I have created for this home button, and while going to info button it deletes all this and creates a frame, new frame essentially, self.master ttk.frame. So this frame does not have anything. So here I can say ttk.label self.frame body, my text is equal to this is the information page dot pack, right? So if I run it now, let me show you clearly what is happening. Yeah, okay, ridge, I need to call the ridge on the frame. It's because I have, so in order to differentiate from the rest of the frames, I have this I configured the button frame after I packed. So that is it. Okay, so I'll just comment these for now. This is because these buttons I need to provide the callback function. I'll just do it later. Okay, so this is the body frame. So this is frame. These frames are going to be constant. So this is the frame that is going to be changing over time. So home button has these. So whenever I click on it, this frame menu is the one, frame body is the only thing that changes. So this is what I'm trying to achieve. So right now home has these labels. For example, one label that contains this information. While going to info, I'm going to forget all the frame, information here, and creating a new frame, and inside this I have a label here. So I hope that makes clear. So create default frames. I don't even need to call this, but I just need to be something. So for every of these 4 options, I'm going to reset the frame contents and create, this resets the frame contents, forgets and creates a new frame. And now as the frame is totally clear, I can create labels here. For example, I copied this and pasted it here, and I can say this is the settings page. So if I run it now, you can see that it changes. So that's what the logic for this. I'm forgetting the old frame and creating a new frame for every time one of these options are called. Okay, so in this video we're going to see the basic logic behind the correction, question selection, and the evaluation, and so on. So here we are in the home page, and as soon as I click the start button, the old frame is erased and the new frame appears, and it asks me for my name. So I'm going to enter test user, and when I hit enter again, the old frame disappears and I am brought to the question. So here there are 2 actions. Clue, which keeps the whole old frame but adds an image to it. Alright, so here when I just probably do this, and now I am brought to another question, but this time the frame is cleared. But as soon as I click the frame button, the clue button, the frame is not cleared. It just kind of adds this image to the existing frame. So this is exactly what's going on. So when I end this, it shows my score, and then when I click on play again, it just brings me back to my home page. So this is what we are exactly going to do in this video. Okay, so in the home page we saw two buttons, start and how to play. So I'm just going to uncomment these, and yeah, I just need to define this function, the callback function, as when I hit the start button. So def play start self, and here it asks me for my enter your name and the enter button, right? So I'm just going to copy those. Okay, since it is a new frame, we are deleting the old frame and creating one with this line of command, and then there is a text field that says enter your name. And as soon as I mean, it just has a basic grid system with row equals 0 and column equals 0, and here I have an entry field. So I am now assigning a variable to the field and then using grid method on it. But for the label, I just define the label and use the grid method directly. But for this I need this variable, because the entry is a text widget, and to get the value of the widget, I need to use a method called get on this widget. So for that I am just storing it in a variable, and then yeah, this is how it gets. So and then we have a button. So all we have is a table label and entry field and a button here. So row 1, row 2. So this button does lead us to another function. So def play self. So this is where the question actually gets started. So I'm going to pass for now. So we need to implement questions. So in this video we're not going to actually implement any databases. So I'm just going to give the question as a dictionary here. So let me just copy all of these and explain why I made it global. And okay, so I have a user questions dictionary. Okay, so this is a dictionary and the key is the question. Okay, this string is a question. It is the key of the particular one. So we have 3 questions here. So 3 key value pairs, and the values is a tuple. Okay, so first tuple, the tuple's first element is the clue image that I'm going to give, and it contains the answer. So for this question, I'm just providing the path to the image. So maybe I have it in an images / folder in a separate way, but here you can see I have all these images in the same directory. So here I gave the path to the image and here the answer itself. So what I'm going to do is render the question, and whenever the user clicks on clue button, this will be displayed, this image will be displayed, and whenever the user clicks on the next button, this answer will be evaluated against the user's answer that they have given it in the entry field. So this is what we are going to do now and we are going to do it for every question and in a random way. So by random way I mean we're just going to use random, and we are just going to select a question from this dictionary randomly, and then we are going to pop the element from the dictionary. So when the play starts again, this user again will be created in a question set. Okay, I'll explain that bit later on. So for now we have this here, and I don't think I need the length. I didn't use it anywhere, but okay. So right now we have this. So I'm just going to render the questions out in this play logic. So let me just copy the play logic and explain it over there. So I have the play logic here, and yeah. Okay, so first we are clearing the frame body, so all questions. So here I have the questions. Okay, so I'm just it'll be probably better if I just use copy, but here it's not a problem. I'll just explain the difference of using copy and using this directly. Okay, so I have questions. So this is global. So I made it global because I'm going to use these functions. Okay, so here random.choice list of question.keys. Question.keys, let me just explain it from the last. So question.keys, what it does is questions is a dictionary, exactly this dictionary, and I'm just going to get only the question part of it, the keys, right? So the keys are the questions, and I'm going to copy all the questions as a list. So this list contains the first one, comma the second key, and so on. So for every questions I have a list. Okay, so from this list there are two questions in this list for now. I'm going to select randomly a question from any of these two questions. Okay, and I'm assigning it to a current question. So this is exactly what I'm doing. So as long as the dictionary is not empty, I'm just getting the question dot keys and storing it in a list, and then getting a random question from the list, and I'm assigning it to question. So this questions is the dictionary, and question is the current question that is in mind. Okay, so we have to be careful here. So right now I'm not deleting the question set. I'm just assigning the question here because I want to evaluate the question later, and if I delete it I won't be able to evaluate the question later on. So in this label I'm just passing the text as question, and I'm allowing the user to enter the answer. So while evaluating I'll just do self dot answer object dot get. Yeah, it's how I will get the answer of the user. And then the clue button, so I have a method called clue, and what I'm going to do here is lambda. I'm using an anonymous function. So right now while using buttons we just use something like self.play. We're just calling the function, but in order to display the clue I need the what the current question is, so that I can respond with the correct clue, right? So I need to pass the question along while calling the clue, calling the function. So when it takes a parameter, we are just going to use a lambda function. This lambda function will be executed only when the button is clicked. So what this says is we are just calling the clue function, which I will implement now in a bit. So in order to pass this, we are just so while passing an argument we need to give lambda functions, otherwise it will start executing it. It's because if I don't have this, it means even before the button is clicked this will be executed because we are calling the function. We are not just passing the function like this we did before. So while passing an argument we need to call the function. That's why we need to give lambda. So this lambda will be called at the right moment instead of before while the program runs. So and I have another button. So this time also I need to evaluate the answers. So this button is used to give the clue, and this button will actually evaluate the user answer, where it will get the entry from the user and it will check if the answer is right or wrong. So here also I need to pass the question in order to compare the answer. So I have lambda here. Okay, so I saved this button to a variable because when the clue button is clicked, the button is disabled so that you don't have to touch the button anymore. So username, you can see this clue button is no longer available for the user. As the clue is already displayed, we are just disabling the button. So it happens later point in time, so that's why I'm just storing the button in this variable. Okay, so this part is about while the dictionary contains the questions. So I will come to the else part later on. We are building this. So okay, now we are just going to copy the clue function and the next action function. So as I said, these two functions take question as a parameter. So let me copy and explain it over there. Yeah. Okay, so next action and clue, they take question as the parameter, and what they say is, so first let me explain the clue method. So I passed the question of it, question the current question to this clue method. So I'm just going to grab the image path to the image here. So questions, so this questions is a dictionary, and then the key is a string, that is the question. So when I use questions of probably this string, for example, it will just return me this tuple. Okay, so that's what exactly doing here, but this time the question is in the current variable, right? So it is like this, and it will return this answer. So in order to do that, questions, so questions of question gives the tuple, and in order to access the first element, which is the path to the image, I'm using the subset which is 0. So I will get the path to the logo, and image.open opens the image, almost like photo image. So I will resize this image, and then, so in order to resize this image, I need to convert this to this image object, and then I'm going to pass to the like photo image. So photo image I already imported. So this time I need to import the image, right? So like this, from image tk. Yeah, okay. So yeah, it is from the pill library, not the Tkinter library, because the resize functions are not in the Tkinter library. So I'm just going to from pill import image tk comma image. Okay, so while using the photo image, I'm using the photo image of the image tk, not from the photo image. So actually this should also work. Let me just try it later. Okay, now I'm just have the image, so I converted it to a photo image. Yeah, they are different. So if I give it as file here, it will be like Tkinter's. This time it is image tk's pillow library. Okay, so yeah, and then we are just passing this as a label. So here we have row equal to column equal to 0. So I did not specify in the play like where the question is visible. So row 0, row 1, row 3 and row 4. I did not specify any widget at row 2 because I've left it for the clue button to use. So here I have used the log button. So as you can see, I'm not creating like erasing the frame body, because I'm just kind of appending, it's not appending, and just inserting in between the frame here. So that's what this bit does. So whenever the clue button is clicked, I'm just reducing the score of the user by 5. So as you can see, I should use the score. I initialize the score to 0, and yeah, I think I'll just initialize in the home button. So here I am initializing the self.score to 0, and I'm reducing the score by -5. The user clicks on the clue button, but the full mark is 10. So if he answers correctly, he will get +5. So this with the clue button, and now I'm just going to explain the next button. So next button gets the answer object. So here we have an entry field, and we are getting whatever the user typed in this answer widget. So in order to get them, we have to get the answer, and in order to delete the we should clear the entry as soon as we are moving to the next question, right? So this contains the old answer, and the next will should destroy the entry that has been previously filled. So in order to delete that, we have to give the 0, and end is kind of the uh, last value inside the entry. So we're just getting the value and deleting the old value. Okay, so the old value we might need to strip to avoid any like the blank spaces after all. So maybe the user enter like this, some spaces, some Mercedes Benz and some spaces and so on, and probably it has some capital letter as well. So we're just, in order to evaluate correctly, we're just stripping out these empty spaces and converting everything to lower, because our answer is everything is in lower as well. So no capitalization is strictly followed here. So we are just comparing with the question's answer. So we have a question object, right? I mean question key, and the last entry is the answer, as I said. So this is the last entry of the tuple. 0 is the image to the object. I can use either -1 or +1, works the same. So that's how. So if the answer is correct, so it means the text user entered object versus the question's answer is actually correct. We are just incrementing the score by 10, and after that we have done all the calculation, right? So the user, it means that the, yeah, when the next button is clicked, it means that the user has moved to the next question. So we are now free to delete the question from the dictionary. Okay, so questions.pop question. So we are providing the key, and along with the like the answer will be, the value will be deleted. And now we are just calling this function again, the play function again, right? So this time the only change is the question's length is now probably reduced. So if we had initially 3 questions, now it's reduced to 2. And since we have a random.choice and we deleted the old question, the new question will not appear, and this time it will be a different question, and so on. It'll the score will be evaluated with the old answer, and the play button will be played. So if there is questions, we are just rendering the question and waiting for the user to enter the input and so on. So when the user hits the last question's next button, this else condition will be satisfied. So I'm not going to display negative scores for the user. The minimum score is 10. So if the user probably took all the cues and had all wrong answers, I'm just going to display 0 instead of negative value. So, and we are getting the name of the player. So the player entered the name, while at the beginning we are getting the name of the user and we are acknowledging his, inside a label. We're just passing the text that you have reached the game's end, and your score is, his score is displayed. Okay, so this is how it works. And after that we're just initializing the cell.score to 0 and then making him play again. Okay, so this is the basic logic. We do not have any databases for now. I forgot this important part. So in order to disable the button, we just need to call the button and use the state key on it, and then we are just making it disabled. This will disable the button like we have seen earlier. Okay, so now let me just check if there's any import error or so on. Let me start. It's a main game. It's demo.py. Okay, let me start and run user. Okay, the clue is being displayed. And I'm going to enter Mercedes Benz. Okay, end is not defined. Oh, I need to import end as well. So let me run it again. User Mercedes Benz. I'm just getting the clue now, and this should be Rolls Royce, and then Bentley. Okay, so I'm shown that I've reached the user's end, so my score is 15, and if I play again, it just asks me for my name. Okay, so that's it for this for now. So next we are just going to implement the database, and we are not going to directly interact with the database for now. I'll just show you how to use the CRUD operations while using Python before using the databases in this code. Okay, so in this video we're just going to create a database for our application. So let me just create a new one. So brand db, in order to create a new one I should do this. So brand db, okay, just going to save it in my project folder. Okay, so I'm just connecting to the database and creating two tables. So the table name is question, and I'm going to enter 3 values here. So they are question, and this is going to be, first I need to implement the ID, right? So I'm just calling serial in my case, so it's going to be primary, unique, and non-null. Let me just add another column, call it question, and it does need to be unique. Okay, so the type of this data is text. Okay, and its type is, the serial type is integer, so I'm just changing that. Okay, I'm just creating another row, and everything is string. So path is a string, and we just take text. It does not need to be unique. I don't want it to be unique for now. And the answer. So answer does need to be text, and I don't want that to be unique as well. So I created a single table, and this is a so here we are just providing the name of the columns and the type integer text, and if there are any constraints, primary key, unique, and we're just providing it as like this. So I'm just creating another table. So this table is for maintaining the high score, while that table is for like question, answers, and so on. So here just let me call it score table and name. So this is going to contain the name. Yep, it is going to be unique, so I'm not going to allow multiple names. So whenever the user plays again, his old score is updated. So so always we are just going to keep track of his old score. I need to provide the text. Okay, so the next column should be score, right? Score is it's an integer, and I don't need any condition to this. So we have two tables created. Just creating here. Okay, let me view this, and data. We have serial, question, path, answer. So I do have an old script already. Let me just check everything is okay. So question is the name of table, question, path, answer is the values. Question, path, answer. We have a serial column extra, but it's auto increment, so I didn't need to worry about it. And the other table is score table, where I have name and score. I don't need ID for this. Okay. So now I'm just going to connect to the database and check if everything works. So this is the old DB file that I have, and brand DB. So it should run without any error. Okay. Let me just close this and rerun the application to see the changes. Okay, so the program I had just entered 3 values to this score, and also some few questions here. This is some test questions that I answered. I can remove this, also remove Yeah, these. Okay, this is undo. Yeah. So now I'm just going to implement this database files. Okay, so for now let me create a new file here under this db file, demo db file. So I do have already created I did create the tables already. So in order to fill the data, we need to implement some creating methods, reading methods, and so on. So first we need to import Sqlite3, and then I'm just going to create a class here. So class that says db operations, and for init method I'm just going to say self. So for now I just need to get a connection to the database. So for that we have some connection commands. So this is what we do need. Where is the other one? Okay, so in order to connect to the database like we did in the SQLite browser, that's the application, we need to give the name of the database. So I created the name, while creating the database I created this, and then I'm going to use Sqlite3's connect method. So right now this self.connection variable has the database connected, so I can close the connection if I want, and then if there is any changes that I have to provide, I have to do like self.con.commit command. So whenever for example, I don't need this command here. So if I insert any row into the database table, I do need to give this for the changes to be permanent. So at last, while inserting, if the change is successful, I will give these comments. So these are the types of comments that that we should take down. So in order to get the questions, I'm going to select questions from the table. Okay, so this is the select question query, and what it does is, so this is a cursor. So self.connection made a connection to the database, and I'm creating a cursor. So this cursor is used to execute the command. So via this cursor, we are going to execute the SQL commands like select, delete, insert into, and so on. So we just stored it in serve.curs. So now we're just executing. So we're just calling serve.curs.execute. So this is exactly what we saw while creating SQLite commands. So select every row from the table called question. So we have a table called question, and from that table we are just selecting every column. Okay, so this has selected the questions. So in order for us to see in like the data, we just need to use self.cursor.fetch all. So there are two methods, fetch one and fetch all, right? So if there are, for example, consider that I have two questions. What is the time? And the answer is, I don't know, 4:50 a.m. And I have second question, where is the clock, and so on, above the wall, on the wall is the answer. So just for the point of it, I have two rows, and in order to get, so this question, for example, this query might have executed and might have fetched these two rows, but if I want to fetch all of them, I will use fetch all. But if I want to fetch one of those, for example the first result, I'll just use this fetch one. But I do need every questions to be selected, so I need everything. So right now I'm just going to create an instance of the database. So questions is equal to db operations. Okay, and I'm going to use questions dot select questions. So I'm just calling this command. Okay, so if I save and run this, python demo db. Not that. Demo db file. Yeah, I need to print. Okay, I don't have any questions now. Let me create few questions using the old file. So demo db file. No, it's the what's the name of database? Oh, yeah, it's brand db. So I'm just creating few questions here using the old command. So in order to do that, I'm just doing this. Yeah, the question is created. Now if I run the demo db.file, now it shows me the questions. For example, we do have this question here, right? So what I did is I queried from this question table, but I did not have any question to show, so that's why I did not print anything. So I ran my old program which has some question created, so I did not implement it here. So now with the question as already created, I'm just querying this. So this is the row, and since, so let me just add another row here. So to test. Okay, so now if I run this, it fetches every row from this table. So from the question table, select every column and every row and fetch me the answer. That's what this command says. So from the question, select every columns, and it would have selected every columns. In order to fetch all the rows, I'm going to use fetch all. So every question is in the row, so I'm just iterating over the questions and printing it. Okay, that's what exactly this does. So now we have implemented the select question method. Now let's move on to inserting questions, so on. So okay, so I'm just going to try to insert any question. So we are just using the self.cursor.execute. So likewise, we have selected the question, and now we are just inserting the question like we said before. So insert into followed by the name of the table, and the column, we have to provide the column here. So there are 3 columns in our database: question, path, and answer. So we're just going to fill questions, path, and answer columns, but the values I did not provide it yet, though the values are separated by this double quote. So since it is a string, I mean the text, we have to provide this in double score, and the f string allows us to, like, I'm getting the question, path, and answer as the arguments to this function. So if I want to call this function, I'm going to use something like questions dot insert question, right? I'm just using this, and then I'm going to pass the question. So this is my third question, path to image, and the answer is this. So this is the 3 argument that I've passed, and by using f string, I am able to provide this directly without using any format. So I just need to use the curly braces. So I'm just filling the question here. So this string will end up going as question and path and answer. So this will insert into the database, and in order to make the insertion permanent, I'm using the commit method as I told you. If there is any error, I'll just print it to check what happens. So if I now run this application, I just need to use the select question later. So if I have the select question, it will just show the 2 questions, as this has not been entered yet. So I'll just print it at last. Now it shows me all the questions. Okay, so now we have a way to insert a question into the database and like read from the database. Okay, And I don't need delete questions for now. We are not going to delete any questions, but it is as simple as that. We are just going to delete from question where we are just giving the ID. So we have these have questions serial number 1 2. So if I want to delete this, I'll just give this serial number and it will delete this entire row. So that's exactly this, but we are not going to delete anything. So we are just, yeah, I'll just hold it for now. So now we are just going to print the high scores, right? So we have another table called score table, and here yeah, I have three datas. So in order to view the data, it is exactly like the same one. I mean, yeah, these two are the same. So select score. So here just we are fetching from this table where score. I don't need this. So we are printing every score from the table. So right now it just fetches every score. Not to get the high score, we're just going to use this method. So I'll just explain it over there. Okay, so we are getting every score from the table, but we won't be needing this unless we are entering like high scores and something. I mean, if we want, we can use high scores, but the highest score is the most important. So what we are doing is from the score table, I'm selecting this value. So max of score. So score is the third column, this one, and I'm just selecting the max of these. So here we have max score of 27, and we are just selecting, and the name will be displayed here. So I'm printing everything. So if I run the program, yeah, I just need to call this. So questions dot highest score. So it should show 27 here. Okay, so this is the highest score. So, and then we are just, in order to insert the score, we are creating another function. So this time we are just seeing if the user who is playing is an old user or a new user. So as I said, while creating this table, the score table, I had the name as unique here. So structure, let me see. Yeah, I have this name unique. So that means there's only one user who is going to. So if I play, so if this user plays again and scores higher score next time, it won't be added to the list. For example, this name and 30. What is going to be done instead is we are just going to update this. Okay, so we have two conditions for it. So first, if the user is not an existing user, so that means insert into score table. So we are just inserting the name and score of the player into the table. But if one exception occurs, like the unique constraint will fail if I try to enter the same name again. So when that error occurs, we are just going to update the user name. So the player's name is already in the database, I mean the table. So I'm going to update the score alone where the name of the user is the current player's name, right? For example, if the name of the user is user name, the test user, so I'm just checking if the test user is already in the database, and I'm just updating the score where the name of the user is test user. So his score will be updated whenever he uses this score. So this is how we are just implemented the score operations. Next we'll just implement embed this both into a single application to into this brand identification game application using database instead of some random questions. Okay, so now since we have the database ready, now it's time to integrate into our Pi. Okay, so now we have these questions. So we're just going to replace these questions in the database. So I just did before the start of this video, and what I did is I have appropriate data now. So I had some random data, but now I just copied questions, path, and answers just like the dictionary. So now what we're going to do is import the DB file. So the name of the file is the name of the file is demo db file import, and inside this file there are classes, right? So this is the class that you are going to import. So we're just going to import db operations. So in this init method we are just going to initiate an object of that class. So in order to do that, let me call that object db object is equal to db operations, just like what we would do here. So we have instantiated the question, an instance of that class, and we are just using its method with the help of this object. So that's what we are exactly going to do here as well. So with this object we are just going to get the class of it. So in order to get these type of questions, but it's not a dictionary, and since we have everything as a dictionary setup, we are just going to get this value. So right now this is a list. It will just return list of all these elements. So it will be a tuple, one row will be a tuple, and every rows will be tuple. So the first tuple contains everything separated by comma, and second and third, and then they are all contained inside a list. So that's what we are going to return. But since we have everything in a dictionary, we already have everything set up as a dictionary, so we assume that we are working with a dictionary. So I'm just going to convert it into a dictionary, but it may not be necessary that we are going to convert it. We can just work with list, but in order to make things easier, so I decided to use that. So I'm just going to use the method select question. Okay, so right now it just like using the question will just print the questions, it won't return anything. So instead of printing it, I'm just going to return self.questions. Okay, so I'm just saving this file here, and if I print this object, the return value, this function, I call this function, right? So the return value will be contained here, and I will just print it. So in order to do that, let me just run demo.file, and yeah, right now, so this one tuple is a question, right? So this one tuple is a question, the second tuple is another question, and the third is another, and they are all inside a list. So in order to make them as a dictionary, I'm just going to like iterate over this. So it's a list, right? For I in, so I'm just iterating over the list. Now I is a tuple, so first time I will be this tuple, second time I will be this, and third will be this tuple. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a dictionary, and that element, like for example, if my dictionary is example, a test dictionary, so test subset of I of 1, right? So this is I of 0. I don't need I of 0, I need I of 1. So I of 1 returns this key, that is equal to a tuple of this I of 2 and I of 3. This will exactly give me the dictionary in this format. So let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to create self.questions. So we are just using the exact same syntax, but now it's self, and self.questions of I of 1. So this will give me the exact this question alone, and that will be equal to tuple of a list of I of 0, I of 2, comma I of 3. So now if I print this self.question, it should give me the exact results as this. Okay, so as you can see, the dictionary, the first element is the question, the key, and the value is just a tuple. And next we are going to second question and so on. So since we have this ready, now we're just going to make changes to the question. So wherever we see questions, we are just going to make it as self.question. So probably it will be here, self.questions. Question is just a variable, we don't need that. So here is what we're going to need. Okay, so let me just print questions. Okay, it has self. Every questions are associated with self. I don't need this. Okay, so now if I run it, we are just now rendering the data from this database, and we should have no problem rendering it. So first let me just enter some username, and yeah, the clue is perfectly working, and this is Rolls-Royce, and Lamont's price is Bentley 26 times, and this is Benz, Mercedes-Benz series. Okay, now yep, we can see that the score is 15. Okay, that worked well. Okay, so we're just going to save the score into the database. Okay, so for that we have few questions. Okay, so create score will allow us to do that. So I'm just going to do the create score. So what we are doing here is, as I said, we are just inserting a new score if there is an if the user is new, or if the user's name is already in the database, we are just updating his score. Okay, so that's what we are doing. So right now, in order to do that, we are just moving to the end of the database, right? Okay, so this is when the game ends and the score is evaluated. So before I set this to 0, I'm just going to call self.db object dot create score. Okay, so create score, and I need to give player and score name, player name and score. So I'm just giving that. So I just got the self.player name, and the score is self.score. Okay, and this will save the user score in the database. So if I give a new user, this should store it. So yeah, let me just print the high scores after doing it, and score. Okay, yeah, this will print the high score. All the scores, to be honest. So I'm just going to try to insert a new score here. Or did I go to this file? Okay, that's confusing. I should probably close this file. Okay, this is the file we are working on, and yep, now I'm just trying to print the score. So it's select score. So print self.db object dot select score. I don't need to print it because it's already printed in that. I'm not returning anything to print it. Okay, so I'm just going to start the game, and some new user, Mercedes, and Rolls Royce. So I should get a full 30 now, and yep, the score is entered in the database. I think I committed the changes. Let me check. Oh, I did not commit the changes. So whenever, oh yeah, I did commit the changes. Okay, so let me try again with a new score this time. So I'm just going to log in as this again and see if what happens if the value updates or anything. So right now it should update. Let me get some. Let me skip all of these and give a 10. And yeah, it is updated. But I want the highest score of the user to remain if the score is less than the previous score. So what I'm going to do is get the score of that user. So for that, self.curse.execute. Yeah. So I'm just going to select the score from score table where I should stick with the convention of capital letters here. So where name equals player. I'll just explain it in a moment. So self.curse.fetch or so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check if the player's score in the database is lesser than the current score. So if it is lesser than the current score, I'll just update it. If not, I won't. So let me just print them. So right now I'll just create a Tesla, 20, and let me just run this file alone, the database file. Demo db. I should give it in a double quotes because it's a text. Okay, so I just need to get the first value. I don't need this. Yeah, I'm just going to get a single value from here, single row. So this should do it. Okay, so 2020. So first I got the score of the current user, and I just now need to compare. So fetch one gets the first row of the return element. The first row will be a tuple, so I just need to get the 0th element to get the accurate score. And now I'm just going to compare these. So if self.player score is less than score, so meaning the score inside the database is less than the current score, I will just update it. Otherwise I'll leave it as it is. So now if I run the demo file and log in as a Tesla user, Mercedes Benz Bentley, yeah, I'm trying to get full score here, and Rolls Royce. So now I should get 30 and the value should be updated as 30. So if I try to get some 0 or less value here for the same user, I won't be getting it. So I'm just trying to get 0 here, and yeah, the value is not updated into the database. Okay, so managing scores is done. We can just add some like high scores list here if we want to like get the list of high scores. So let me just quickly do it. If yeah, that might sound interesting. So without any about tab, let me make it high scores. Command equals self dot. Okay, so here I'll just query from the database. So self dot db object dot select score. So I think I have a function that returns every score. So I just need to return self dot scores, and I should print them as a label there. Okay, so it returned this, and I need to have a label that says ttk.label frame text is equal to this. So it will just print as a list. I'm just checking if everything's okay. So if I try to run it now, yep, it says like this. I'll just format it better. For I in self dot, open up this page. Yeah, so this is just prints the list of high scores. Yeah, that's enough. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, so we are just going to add few questions to the database. So settings, it has nothing here as of now. So we're just going to add questions to the database through the GUI interface. So for that, what we can do is, so let me just create the front end part real quick. I do have it here. So add question and save question. Settings. Okay, so what I have here is whenever I click the settings tab, so this is the settings tab, so I'll just call the settings button, settings callback function, and there I place a button called add a question. So as soon as a question is yeah, that button is clicked, I'm just going to show a list of some fields like these. So enter the question and enter the path for the clue and enter the correct answers separated by comma. Okay, so these are the labels and I have text entry, entry field for all of these. So 1, 2 and 3, yeah, 3 entry fields. So now what I'm going to do is, so when the user selects the save question method, I have a old function that says getting the question and path to the image. So right now we have the database and we have implemented the insert question operation that takes 3 arguments. So I'm just going to call that method. So self.db object dot create, insert question. So I should have probably a good naming convention. So insert question, and I'm going to pass the 3 arguments: question, path, answers. I don't need to pass self because I'm calling it with self. So it just, it is quite similar like calling that. So I'm just going to pass self.question, self.path to image, and self.add answer. Okay, so this will add the question that I want to the database. So if I close and run it now, go to settings tab, add a question. So just going to add the question is about Bentley, and just going to add the same logo1.gif. I think logo2.gif is Bentley. Select the answer, so Bentley it is. Okay, so question field does not have an attribute called get. Let me see what the problem is. Oh, it's okay. So self.question is an entry field, and I've just used the grid method directly. So I just need to change this. Self.path image field and self.add answer field. Add answer field. Okay, so I don't need to change this. I just need to, that's fine. This is just a variable for storing the answer, but this is the actual entry widget, so that should be fine now. I think the question is added, so let me start the game and we should see that extra question now. Okay, Bentley. Oh, it's not added, I think. Okay, so it's because I've added the questions in the initialization, so I should probably change it to the home page. Where the home page is actually loaded. Okay, so that should work fine, but now we will see the exact question because now the program is refreshed. So we can see. So let me just add another question to see if it actually worked. Test logo1.gif and test. Okay, so I'm just going to home. So whenever I clicked home, it should have like re re-rendered the database. So you can see the test. Yeah, now we've added the question. Okay, so I think the project is over.